tonight's guest.
Your inner child keeps sabotaging your adult life. That's because they're still trying to survive your childhood. This younger part of you doesn't know that the danger is over. They're using the same protective strategies that kept you safe as a kid. People pleasing, self-sabotage, emotional shutdown. Because to them, you're still in the same home where those strategies were necessary for survival. You push away good relationships because your inner child learned that closeness equals pain. You self-sabotage success because that younger part of you learned that being seen equals danger. You people please until you're exhausted because your inner child learned that saying no meant abandonment and rejection. These aren't character flaws. These are survival strategies a child developed that your adult self is still running. Your inner child doesn't know you're safe now. To them, you're still living with a parent who hurt you. They're operating from a nervous system stuck in childhood danger, making adult decisions from child-level fear. When you feel triggered, that's because that younger part of you still thinks that the threat is happening right now. They need you to tell them that the danger is over. The strategies your inner child developed saved you then, but they're destroying you now. Making yourself small saved you from your parents' rage, but now they're keeping you from your dreams. Emotional shutdown protected you from overwhelming feelings, but now it's stopping you from making real connections. Your inner child is still protecting you from dangers that no longer exist. You have to update that frozen part of you to the present moment. Thank them for keeping you alive and gently show them, prove to them that you're an adult now with resources, choices, and powers and skills that they didn't have. You can protect them. They don't have to protect you anymore.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm really thrilled to have you here. It's like, this is somebody that I watch all over the internet. So first off, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Bengal spice tea.
Very exotic of you. I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah, I've already
Tim
had two.
Hortons.
Oh, wow, it's so Canadian. I love it.
Well, listen, let's start off this way. I was going through your profile, was going through reading a little bit more about you. I was going through and trying to figure out how to summarize. How do you summarize Dr. Kai? And I figured the probably easiest way to start is with your book. And you wrote a book that speaks to emotionally immature parents. When you write a book about emotionally immature parents, do your parents give signed copies and autographed copies to their friends?
Yeah. So actually, October 2023 was like about a year writing it, 1 year process. And when it got published, I was back in Whitehorse. So it
Okay.
was pretty round circle, but I had a little book event at the local bookstore called Max Fireweed, which I grew up going to. So
Okay.
there, my uncle, my aunt came, my mom came, and we bought
Oh,
a copy and signed. But no one's really ever, like, we never, like, no one's ever felt offended or hurt or got defensive, or I've never had like a confrontational conversation with my parents. So overall, everyone is very proud that I wrote a book, but no
as
one's
they should be.
ever like brought it up that like, hey, like emotionally mature parents, or what's this book about? Like, are you talking crap about me?
Right? Exactly. So,
Yeah.
how about we start this way? What exactly do you mean by emotionally immature, be it parents or ourselves? What is an emotionally immature somebody?
Yeah. Like since then, writing the book, like another maybe title or concept name, I may prefer it more. And maybe it's more like emotionally under-resourced.
Okay.
And it's not like, it's not like a bad word where just like no one's born with like emotional maturity or emotional intelligence. It's something that we develop, learn, and grow. And anyone can go from like an immature child to a mature adult. So emotional immaturity is like a, I guess, like a phase that we kind of go through where we might just not understand and have a way to be with one's emotions. And emotions, the way that I break it down, it's like the language of our body. It happens inside of us, and
Right.
thoughts are like the language of the mind. They are connected. It's hard to draw like a boundary of when thoughts become like more body feelings and when feelings become more thoughts. But it does require like another way of understanding and being with compared to the world of thoughts, which I think as a society in general, we're more maybe skill. Well, I don't know if
Right.
skill is the right word, but we're more like thoughts in our head. It just kind of it makes more sense, maybe easier for us to navigate. Whereas when it comes to these emotions that happen inside of us, we might not have as skillful of a way to be with these feelings, to talk about it, express it, regulate it, process it.
So when you're talking about regulating and capacity and dealing with emotions and immature emotions, is this something that each one of us has to address? Do some people just naturally pop out of the oven and they are secure and ready to go, and the rest of us have to figure out how to work out every week until we sort of get buff emotionally?
Yeah, that's a great question, Darren. I guess going through this work myself and over these years of having so many conversations and working with students and clients, I realized probably most parents are relatively emotionally immature. And it's almost like starting off as young children, we needed a lot from our parents. Like, if anything, for us to grow up perfect, there's no perfect growing up,
Right?
but growing up in a way you become secure, authentic, confident in yourself, self-loving, self-accepting. It does require our parents to have some degree of self-loving, self-acceptance, emotional presence, awareness, attunement. So I would say most children who grow up into adults had parents that were relatively emotionally immature. So we almost individually, maybe collectively, we need to go through the emotional maturing process where school and our family of origin in some ways failed to help guide us and maybe grow us into emotional mature adults.
What does that look like?
Yeah, what does that look like? Ah,
Because
it
surely
almost
that's not me as a parent. That has to be somebody else, right? What does it look like?
Oh my gosh, like what it
Tick,
looks
tick,
like.
tick.
Yeah, right. I mean, what it looks like, that's the joke, but almost having our parents like saint-like, saint-like parents of presence, right? Of connection, um, them themselves being overall relatively grounded and regulated. So the best way to help a young child regulate is being their main caregivers regulated themselves. That is the best way to help a child experience grounding, regulation, attunement. But we're pretty resilient as children, so not
Right?
perfectly. So parents can still react sometimes. They're tired, they're hangry, they can explode a little bit. But overall, like, can our parents provide that almost like safe home where I'm okay for myself to react and right experience big emotions and our parents
Right.
kind of like being okay with us having these reactions and them almost being that safe home for us.
You know, it's funny when we raised our children, I remember the prevalent thought at that time was self-soothing. Let them cry until
Right.
they soothe themselves.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of their lives, I've said to my kids, listen, I'm putting money away for your therapy now. Let me know when the invoice is coming.
That's Darren. I have a good friend, your similar age, who did the same thing.
Exactly,
Savings
right?
account for his children.
But you know what's interesting about it is I often think about my generation or my parents' generation, and you know, we didn't have access to the internet. We didn't have somebody, Dr. Kai, on Instagram that would say, do it this way or that way. We didn't have. So we were raising children often by the seat of our pants, or at the very least, the way that we were raised,
Yeah.
carrying whatever that we carried. How does this play out generationally? Did I muck up my kids just simply because I didn't have Dr. Kai on Instagram, or did I muck up my kids because I just did what I needed to do as I knew how to do?
But what's very important for everybody, you included, me included, all your listeners, it's not about blaming. It's right. If you're the parent that you're reflecting, please don't blame yourself.
Mm,
Like you said, like you truly didn't know any better at your generation and what was the norm. So it's very, and even for the adult children that are listening, it's also not about blaming our parents. But it's also not so black and white because I can make a bet that you also, in a lot of ways, were a good enough parent. In a lot of ways, you probably provided and coached and right. But that's the hard part when it
that's
comes.
just the last week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's the hard part with, us being, the children, adult children, and if you bring in like traumas, it's hard to remember sometimes those good moments.
Sure.
And sometimes those good moments is just those daily boring bits of
I
you showing up, those daily, consistent,
absolutely.
every day from, their entire childhood that we sometimes don't think about it. We don't reflect and look at that as well.
Well, without a doubt, I've often heard it put, we can think back throughout our lives and we might be able to remember the occasional Christmas dinner. We might be able to remember that one time we had lobster in the backyard on the barbecue. But for the majority of our lives, we can't remember the meals that we had every day, but it was the meals we had every day that sustained us and got us to where we're going.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like a journey that we have to go through on our own. And it's very the natural progress, I guess, of healing is almost like, maybe blocking it out or not thinking about it, but then, people start watching my content or learning about childhood trauma and neglect. Then it's like they open up this box. And it's very normal for us to maybe go into maybe anger mode, resentment, and a little bit of blaming, shaming energy. Either,
Yeah.
it's like we might blame or shame ourselves for things that happened to us or things that, we were exposed to. And it could be very easy for us to then go into blaming, shaming mode towards our parents.
So is it, I mean, you use the word trauma, and I guess we would all understand that there's capital T letter big trauma, and there is, trauma that we all face or momentous moments in our life that we all face.
Yeah.
When we are growing up and we realize that for whatever reason, the way I grew up has affected the way that I connect with other people, I connect with myself, I connect in relationships, the way I'm now in a relationship or parenting. First off, what what do I need to see to realize that's maybe what's going on?
Hmm. I mean, if we bring in like the wounded inner child, and here's the thing, right? Every individual, their makeup is unique. So you can have that you can have two children go through almost exactly identical events
Right?
in their family growing up, and one might become an adult who's like very reactive, become a big people pleaser, self-sacrificer, and the other one, relatively normal. Um, so with big T traumas, with maybe more PTSD, it's like witnessing, violence or being, abused physically, emotionally, or
Right?
sexually. And then little T trauma, like more complex PTSD, of like many, many moments of like relationship connection fractures, moments of maybe like neglect or dismissing, just all those little um, moments, kind of little T traumas. Like one way for us to connect is just recognizing in my normal day-to-day life across relationships, do I ever get triggered where it seems like my emotional reaction response it might be seemingly bigger
Okay.
than what's proportional to what's actually happening. So in complex PTSD, there's this concept called emotional regression. So whenever, just reflecting, whenever even you can even be judging yourself, or maybe someone even saying like you're overreacting right now. Or we think to ourselves that why did I overreact? It's almost like, we something happens and we emotionally age regress. It's almost like we black out where our present day adult capacities like just kind of disappear. And we might be speaking, acting out of character, out of our values. And then we kind of calm back down. We might even be like, what just happened?
Right. There are moments of frustration. I swear to goodness, everything on my phone frustrates me now at the age that I'm at. And one of those moments where you're frustrated and you bang it down on the kitchen table kind of thing. And after, my spouse will look at me and will say, that's literally the way a child behaves.
Okay.
And I remember sort of thinking about that one night sitting out on my porch, um, and wondering that if there were certain points of my emotional development where things sort of stop or get stuck at. And when we tell somebody to grow up, it's like literally this means emotionally growing up and growing your capacity. Is this what we're talking about?
Yeah, Darren. Like how you described it, we have like almost arrested development, like emotional arrested development.
My question then is when we get the sense that we might have been raised by emotionally immature parents, what does it start to look like in us? You talk to people pleasing. What am I seeing going on in me? And maybe a
Yeah.
better word, what am I feeling?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a firm believer. We're all like wounded children living inside adult bodies,
Okay.
really trying our best. Really trying our best. So sometimes, it might be a compassionate exercise to, yes, recognizing our parents were and still are emotionally immature, and they have a wounded child inside. And sometimes growing up, but also not to, I guess, just look down on ourselves and other people as this wounded child. We also have like, adult parts, um, coming to terms and realizations that this is maybe what happened, what was missing, what maybe difficult things that happened. And even a lot of us, when it comes to being raised by emotionally immature parents, there might have been moments of abuse, verbal, emotional, maybe even physical. But I think it's that it's the verbal, maybe emotional um, hurts that we kind of carry, that our body kind of remembers. So our relationship with our parents, it's a very important one. It's almost like the initial bridge that we created, like as we are being in this world. So um, we have so much history, with our parents and also
Right.
with other family members. So maybe like another thing to be aware of is is there frustrations or resentment that just, oh, it's so strong when it comes to you speaking with your parent, interacting with your parent.
Right.
Like I joke to my clients, like, let's see how much you've been healing by spending some time in the same roof with your parents for a couple of days and couple of weeks. So
Ooh.
some, yeah, right. Some good signs you're healing is things about your parents that maybe bothered you both before no longer maybe bothers you as much. And really discerning, is my parents maybe acting or speaking to me in ways that are makes me feel hurtful. Versus, is my parents just kind of being who they are? And maybe my younger part needs them or expects them or wants them to be different. And that sometimes is the healing work. Because that younger part of us really needed our parents to be ideal, saints, almost
Right.
perfect, to have all these abilities that emotionally mature adult would have.
You talk about people pleasing and you talk about over functioning and you talk about over explaining, you talk about avoidance, you talk about as all reactions to being raised by parents that perhaps were not able to foster the development in us.
Mm,
What are those things, and why do we do them?
yeah, survival. We did it out of survival. And, survival for a child, survival would be like just fitting in, receiving love, attention, connection. So if we go back to childhood, and even looking at this once again through the lens of complex PTSD, there's like the fight, flight, fawn, and freeze.
Right.
And the fawn is essentially people pleasing personalities we developed because we learned at a young age for me to get people's attention or how I fit in is to not be a burden, minimize my own emotions and needs because no one else can handle them or navigate them. And I get praises by
Right.
being like polite or sweet or right. So we learn at a young age. So these are once brilliant adaptive strategies that for a young child, it's absolutely brilliant
Right.
for us to figure out that if I appease and be very nice and sweet and very giving, I'll get love and attention and praises.
You come from a medical background, so I'm assuming that when you talk about the body, you know what it is that you're talking about. You actually had referenced this earlier. We feel it in our body. Our body remembers. What does that mean?
Yeah. So me included, I spent most of my life like just neck up, just
Right.
so in my head, so in my head. And I was very disconnected, like dismembered from my body, the body, the nervous system, until maybe 7, 8 years ago. I was like struggling through medical school and I started seeing a therapist. And one day she called me out, was like, Kai, please don't take this the wrong way. You've been sharing a bit about your childhood and your stress with medical school, and but from hearing of how you've been sharing, it seems like you're telling me how you should be feeling or what
Right.
you think you should be feeling. Has anyone ever shown you or taught you to actually feel these
Feel.
feelings? Yes. And I was taken aback. I got triggered.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I tried to hide me taking it personally, but I think it cracked through my face. And then she like, she took it back. She's like, hey, I'm sorry, didn't mean to bring it up, but just think about it. Because if this is something you want to work on, I have some tools I can teach you, I can show you. Because I think it's really going to help you navigate your stress, navigate these feelings of guilt that you experience with your friends. So that was the beginning of me starting to learn at first the concepts of feelings and then the body, but then the practice of almost bringing our awareness from up here or like out there, like into
To your
here.
body. It's this is something that has been a part of my own personal journey, and I find it absolutely fascinating. I think I've always been somebody that has been very deep, um, but the way that I would view my world now is I often previously equated emotions and feelings as the same thing. Now
Mm,
I somehow have a sense that my emotions are something that comes from the feelings in my body. The emotions is the sense that my mind makes of what's going on in my body.
Mm.
This was beyond me before. I just could not fathom, nor was it very masculine in the sense of understanding
Yeah.
this in guy language.
Yeah.
Um, what is this? Of course, it's somatic, but is this where you are working with your clients?
Yes. So when I talk about, I guess, the emotional work, it is really tied to also like the inner child healing work. Um, so I guide my clients through. So the first tool that I learned was an emotional wheel.
Okay, yes,
I have a love-hate relationship with it. Like it's a pretty good resource for learning the names of all these emotions. And on your standard emotional wheel with 3 layers, there's probably like 100 names of emotions.
right,
But I also had such a frustrating experience. So I put it on the background of my phone. And even though I was like a busy medical student, at least once a day, I would just turn on my phone, I'll see the wheel, and I'll check in.
right.
What am I feeling right now? And I kind of go through this wheel. And it was like 2, 3 weeks of just feeling like I'm just guessing. I don't really know. And then until like maybe a month in, it was starting to like, I don't know how to describe it, like feel.
Crystallize,
Yeah, crystallizing that, yeah, I think I am feeling anxious right now. I am feeling a little bit like exhausted and tired right now. I am feeling maybe a bit excited or grateful.
you know what's so weird about it is what you and I are saying right now is so obvious that it stuns me how not obvious it was. So, in other words, I am feeling excited. What does excited feel like? Well, it feels like I want to, go do something new. No, no, no. What does it feel like?
Mm.
And I really struggled to explain what excited feels like. Now I can recognize excited has a little flutter in my chest.
Yeah,
Excited usually means that my shoulders go back, my head goes up. I am looking off to the left as I'm trying to sort of think my way through something that's very positive. It's a positive feeling that's happening in my body. And that somatic awareness was something that I just genuinely could not conceptualize.
yeah.
What happens when you do?
Oh, because it's interesting, right? Because like yes, how we learn is maybe initially through like concepts and knowledge, but once again, it's pretty cerebral,
Right.
brainy. So, really, the somatic work and connecting with our body, expressing these feelings or connecting with them, it's like a different world
Yes.
where the concepts can only bring us so far. And then we almost got to surrender and let go of the analyzing, like being in our heads and really like kind of being in the body. And it is very foreign. If anything, a lot of smart people, like analytical people, they have the hardest time to almost get
Sure.
back and return to their body. And also, it's really challenging because a lot of my clientele, they're very stressed. They're like people pleasers, but also like anxious, like overthinkers,
Yes.
worriers, spent their whole life living in their head. So it's actually also kind of maybe initially a scary experience to almost realize there's a different way of experiencing that's not in the dimension of our thinking.
Okay. Yes.
So kind of initially, we might even feel more anxious at first of
And you're
like,
not making it mystical. You're not trying to say it's out in the universe. It's just not a part of our thought process. It's a part of our body process.
yeah. And from my own practice and what I guide my clients is through breath work and meditation can be like a daily
Absolutely.
practice for us to start almost disentangling and maybe like detaching from the world of thoughts and being, in the present. But I think also there's an element of being present, of also kind of being in the rest of our home, rest
Wow.
of this body.
This
It's almost
body.
like attic, and
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
entire home. And right, like we also have this entire home that we can relearn that it's kind of safe.
So when
Um,
I'm living my life day to day, and my personal conclusion is we live in a world right now where it's pretty easy to feel the chaos. You don't have to
yeah,
try hard to feel the chaos in the world around us. Turn the news on, turn social media on, and we're there.
Yeah.
When we get to a place where we are tapping into this, do we feel different? Is it like, what am I looking to accomplish? Am I just looking to be less stressed, or what does my life look like a year from now?
One of the side effects of this work, whether it's meditation, breath work, or discovering other somatic practices, or even, seeing a therapist, you will. I mean, like life is still maybe stressful and you might still feel stress at times, but it's almost like we can better be with it. Like what you said mentioned earlier, like capacity, maybe more resiliency, we can be
Right,
with it. But also, I think part of doing this work, and maybe it's part of being less just in our heads and maybe rewiring how we're thinking and making this more connection with these feelings. We don't add more internal stress and pressures to an
right,
already kind of stressful and chaotic life. Because we end up doing that when maybe we don't have practices to almost like tame and retrain our minds to be less maybe just like worrying, ruminating, overthinking, overanalyzing. It's almost like we have this very powerful supercomputer, but right now it's not well trained. And there's even maybe some coding in it that
right,
makes it work very ineffectively.
right.
And maybe in a way, not just maybe it's too big of a jump to say that we might even have like virus programming that it is maybe damaging and hurtful to this operating system. So yes, one of the effects is you will probably feel less stressed. There's maybe like it feels like less of a war zone inside oneself. It feels like, right, a lot of us, we are probably dealing with that harsh inner critic that sometimes it's very loud, it's very obvious it's happening, but sometimes it's very quiet in the background. But the hard part is sometimes a lot of us, we have even identify
Sure,
with this
sure.
harsh inner critic that's like it's not really who we are. So there might be like I keep bringing it back to the analogy of a home. Signs that this work is working is that overall in your inner being, it feels like what a home, a loving, safe, encouraging, warm home should feel like.
Like a porch with a
Yeah, like
fire
a
on it.
porch. Yeah, like seriously, like a porch where you could just, oh my God, relax.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to like overthink, and there's an element of calm and ease and just
Safe.
safe and spontaneity.
Yeah.
Like I really believe like, there has to be that safety for us to maybe be our authentic, genuine self.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Whenever I invite people, let's say, to our home and we're hanging out on my porch, the actual golden rule is that you need to feel it when you leave. You need to
Oh,
feel that we've sat in a place that was safe and we laughed and we've cried and we've shared. And that's kind of, it's become a sacred spot in our home. This place has
wow.
become a sacred spot. And I do this actually, it's very much a dad thinking. I'm confessing to anybody that's listening. It's very much a dad thinking because I want people to know what safe feels like.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
will actually say to people when we do get chances to sit on my porch, I will actually say to them, "Isn't this a lovely moment right now? Just isn't this just a wonderful moment that we're sharing right now?" I'll call it out in
Yeah.
the middle of it, and I'll actually challenge people, just say, like, put a hand on your heart, and I'd like you to remember this moment, and
Yeah.
let's use this as a reference point going forward. Not that every moment in life should feel like this, because that's not real, but this is what safe feels like, just so we can remember what it feels like in our body.
Yeah. Oh, how beautiful.
At what point do we stop? looking to our parents and saying, I am because of them. And now I need to own it and say, I am who I am because of me.
Oh,
Where is that point that crosses over? Am I still responsible to raise my 40-year-old children, or are my 40-year-old children responsible to get past what dad did to them?
yeah. Oh, I think that's the million dollar question.
Sure.
Uh, I would say it is scary, but also very empowering. It can become very empowering the moment, and it could be like a line in the sand moment, or it's like multiple moments across time where it's like, I take full responsibility
Mhm.
for these wounds that I carry
Right,
and what it's going to take to heal.
right.
People can support me, but no one can do it for me. And then here is where maybe someone initially going through this process, here might be anger. It's not fair.
Sure.
They did this
Right.
to me. Like, why
Blame.
do I have to do it now? My life was fucked up or messed up. Now I have to deal with that. They should deal
Yeah.
with it. They should fix this for me. But then, right, it's like then we shift into blaming and shaming. And if we're gonna play this game of blaming and shaming, for it to be a fair game, our parents get to play too. So
Right.
then, right, we talk to our parents and right, they could be like, well, you have to understand when I was a kid, it was even worse, like with
Yeah.
grandma and grandpa. And right, if our grandparents are alive, they can play the game. If we keep pointing, it goes like all the way maybe back to Adam and Eve and the snake.
Right.
So it doesn't help us heal.
Well, and there's got to be a difference between big T and small t traumas as well. That's got to be taken into
Yes.
consideration without a doubt.
Yes. Yes. And I guess, I'm not trying to cope here. Um, but there's a lot of wisdom. There's
Mm,
a lot of growth in one's healing journey. And like so if one were maybe, I don't know if bravery is the right word, to take on such a journey
mhm.
as one go through it, not only are you maybe healing yourself, but you're also like healing a lot of maybe shame or fear that's been running in your family that previous
Generational.
generations couldn't do, or previous generations could only heal and overcome so much, and they pass on
Sure.
the torch to us.
And you dovetailed this so nicely. I was going to ask you literally about generational patterns and breaking generational patterns, because the parents that raised us taught us how to be parents. We're going to all be parents someday, and there's a good chance our kids are going to be looking to the way that we raise them as parents. What is the thoughts and the roles of generational pattern breaking? Where does that play in all of this?
Yes. Um, Kind of with the analogy of like, these patterns, the traumas, gets passed down generation and maybe with certain generations. Truly, parents tried their best to make as many changes as they're aware of that they grew up with to make sure they don't do that, their children don't experience that. But sometimes it's like, it's like we can only go through so much, but also as generations change, but it's a feat. It's a
Mm,
huge monumental task for us to heal, rewire these patterns, and then we make these changes. Healing and breaking these patterns is recognizing whether it's like directly how I am showing up and behaving and connecting in ways that might be similar to mom and dad, our caregivers, but sometimes the other way. We swing the other
pendulum
extreme,
swing,
and that also can be not
right?
the way of doing it. So, right, you might have parents that are very controlling, helicoptery, critical, and then you're like, when I'm a parent, other way, no boundaries,
So
no
is this
rules.
part of the human experience? Again, if we were to take judgment, and we're not
Yeah.
talking or excusing any kind of inappropriate behavior of any kind,
Yeah.
but is this part of the human experience that we kind of, in raising our children, are also going to scar them a little bit as well?
Yeah, I would say this is like a traumatized world.
Right,
Even, if it's not our parents, like being brought into this world and being in this world, it can be a traumatic experience. So yeah, Darren, like I said earlier, I believe most parents are emotionally immature, or another way of
right.
talking about it, most parents haven't fully healed their wounds, their traumas, their baggage. And it's
As
almost
few
like
people have.
a few people have. So it's almost
Right.
like, but not excusing the abuse,
No, of course.
physical, sexual,
Yeah.
verbal abuse, but it's almost like it is almost to be expected that it is a bit of one's journey to heal, one's journey if you're to be a parent to pass on as little.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be so much that you were not gonna be aware of at the time.
How has it changed your life practically? So, in other words, not changed what you talk about,
Yep.
changed how you live your life.
Yeah. I mean, like growing through this, I actually had so much anger, resentment, bitterness towards my parents most of my 20s. And right, if you took it out of context and you were just to maybe hear one phone conversation with my mom, you might judge where mom was just kind of being worried, repeating
Yeah.
herself, having these monologues, and their adult son just lost his cool and told mom to shut up and hung up on her.
Right.
So, oh my gosh. But then, the more that I went through it, I realized I carried this hurt, wounded, anger-filled child that needed someone's attention. And it wasn't from mom and dad because they only have certain capacities. They couldn't almost connect with that little part the way that they
Right.
need. So then I kind of realized that me, I'm the adult. I
Right.
am that guardian figure that needs to reconnect and reparent and be with that part.
Right.
And then, as I kept moving forward, um, I began to unpack a lot of these hurts and angers that was from these past events that I couldn't fully make sense of it, process. And then the further I went along, I mean, it's messy as we go.
Sure.
Years ago, I thought for me to forgive my parents, to release this anger, they had to apologize. They had to admit what they did was wrong and kind of be punished for it.
Right.
So one day, pretty unskillfully, I kind of like cornered my mom at brunch and I brought up this kind of painful childhood memory.
Right.
I didn't do it in the most loving, compassionate way. I was kind of doing it in a way that I almost wanted to kind of punish my mom for what she did. And then she kind of, she probably truthfully did not remember that moment. So she kind of
Sure.
brushed it aside. I felt even more angry and I left the brunch super angry.
This is a
Didn't
big
talk to
deal
her.
to me. How can you not
Yeah,
remember?
how could you not? So then I realized, forgiveness is an inside job and it might support you if our parents acknowledge or validate what happened. But there's so many reasons why maybe they can't, they're not willing to, or truthfully, I also believe in that moment, our parents were probably in their own trauma response
Right.
and they might have reacted in a way that they might not really remember. Because, right, for us to remember, you have to be in that porch environment,
Right.
calm, you feel safe, you're able to like allow things to come in for us to almost like remember it. And then, we can talk about toxic shame. So, anyways, my mom didn't acknowledge what she did, and I kind of left for a few more years, super angry and bitter, until I kind of realized that that's for me to validate,
Wow.
acknowledge, to feel the anger. And then underneath the anger is usually the hurt, the grief.
Right.
But fast forward, my parents, themselves changed a little bit over the years, but they're still very similar
Yes.
to maybe how they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I think the important part for the listeners is as long as recognizing our parents aren't being abusive in present
Right?
day, can we learn to accept our parents for who they were and who they are
Mhm.
with their skills, their capacities, and their lack of skills, lack of capacity?
Right.
And can I almost just like myself and in other relationships, like get what I needed? And we almost
Wow.
release our parents from having to be those relatively perfect saint-like figures for us.
You're using a very you're using a very sacred concept in a very secular world. You're kind of talking of gracing our parents. Parents.
Wow, yeah,
There's a
grace our
word we just there's no other place that I've often thought that I could use that word, but as you're talking, it's like gracing our parents, particularly as I'm their age now, right? I remember
wow,
my parents.
yeah.
Wow.
And also acknowledging and honoring our parents for what what they provided for us.
Sure.
And even though sometimes it feels like it wasn't enough, all these things
Sure.
happen. But I guess a part of emotional maturity process is recognizing if I was in their shoes, they were actually trying their very best
Yes.
and they really stretched their capacity, even though it might not seem like it
Or
for me
didn't.
or didn't. Yeah, also didn't.
Yeah. You got to accept it. It's not changing. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that I love about watching your account, I regularly definitely enjoy when you put content out specifically speaking to these points. But the one that makes me love you the most is when you get on there and you're dancing.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I'm like, what the hell is he doing? And then I sort of about the second or third video in, I'm like dancing around the front room going, oh, I'm just listening to
Oh,
Kai's music. Tell me why. Why do you dance and what does it do to your body? And because you describe yourself as an angry 20-year-old whatever. So angry 20-year-old whatevers don't dance on the internet.
yeah. I'm 34 now, so definitely in my 20s, I wasn't dancing very much. It was pretty serious and rigid. I mean, like it started very young. My mom tells me that when I started to like balance on my feet and I could start to almost walk and stand, whenever I would hear music, my mom would say I'd start laughing and like bouncing and dancing. So I started very young, but then sadly, part of this world, we stopped dancing. For whatever reason, we stopped dancing, we stopped playing, we stopped singing.
Yes,
So I kind of lost it for a very long time until I was able to kind of dance again. I felt so freeing, but also it was this journey, like exposure therapy, of overcoming my anxiety, that self-criticism that will get activated
right.
when I tried to dance. So even now, I'm still doing this work myself, like dancing and festivals. That's a very healing place for me. I can just go
Yes,
to myself even. But even then, like when I'm dancing and really allowing myself to dance freely, almost surrendering that thinking mind, I still have to navigate that anxiety, the fear of
right.
judgment. But one recent experience, as I was like trying to navigate the state of like self-conscious and feeling like I'm being judged and kind of repressing my movement, I almost like imagined that I am a child
Mhm.
dancing, and behind me was my mom and dad, and they were there. And they were there, whether protecting me or encouraging me to just dance and just dance.
You're
Um,
figuring it out at 34. Some of us don't figure it out for another 30 years. So you're ahead of the game,
yeah, like as humans, we've lost balance to the world.
right?
And not to sound facetious or whatever, but you like dance, like just dance and keep dancing
One
and
of the
dance.
few things that we can feel emotionally in our body,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whenever I have a guest, I always try to articulate what it is that I actually tangibly feel. And what I feel when Dr. Kai comes in and chats with me today, just so you've heard it from somebody, I feel gentleness and joy.
Wow.
And I say that because, and as I regularly tell visitors when they come, we often don't hear what it is that other people feel from us, and it is a thrill to be able to feel such things from other people.
Wow.
Listen, I got to thank you so much for taking time. I know you're a very, very busy person, but taking time for us today. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to make sure that we let everyone know how to find you on Instagram, though they probably found you long before they found me. And with and with that one, when you do come to Toronto, just so you know, you and I are going out for EMD and staying up late in the midst of the night, dancing wherever, and then coming back to.
Yes, I cannot wait to experience the porch in real life. But likewise, Darren, like what I felt
Absolutely.
here was warmth. I felt warmth and I felt at ease. I felt comfortable. And like what you said, you provide for your friends and whoever comes by. I kind of experienced it across the country, here today with you. So thank you as well.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Kai. And thank you so much for joining us tonight on my back porch, getting a sense of just sitting around, sharing our hearts, and talking about things that matter. You have a lovely night. Good night.